Hello there, Squirrel Army. How's it going for today? I wanted to come on and talk about Mega Evolution and why I think it's like they might be making some new forms, but I do think that it's really tough to make new Mega Pokemon in some ways. And I actually think like the idea of mega Pokemon, like that sort of thing, and same thing with Gigantamax in some ways, that sort of style of, well, not evolution, but sort of that style of like temporary sort of buffs or whatever it is, that sort of thing, isn't really where they want to be. I think that they've cracked the code in the last few years with the regional style evolutions and with the cross gen evolutions now that they've kind of done for some regional forms and whatnot, that sort of thing as well. Like new Pokemon evolving, not just getting a new form, but also getting a new evolution as well. Like some of them are a little bit like, yeah, like Weirdeer and Sneasler and things like this. It's like a little bit weird with how the games kind of work, like with them being in the game or whatever. Shouldn't they really not be in the game or whatever it is because they're from like hundreds and thousands of years ago or whatever it is? But we've got the past Paradox Pokemon, and they're technically from hundreds of thousands of years ago, whatever it is. And the same is true for the future Paradox Pokemon. So surely we can still get these type of things in the game. I think having more permanent evolutions or whatnot, or permanent forms, is way better than having new mega evolutions. So I think it's really tough to give anything a new mega evolution. I think people want to see new Pokemon get new mega evolutions, but I don't think it's that easy to give Pokemon new mega evolutions, because what happens when Gen 10 or Gen 11 or Gen 21 or whatever it is comes around and suddenly we're in a new region and suddenly there's no more megas, or mega evolution isn't a huge factor, or Gigantamax isn't a huge factor anymore. It was just that gimmick that was from a few years ago or whatever it was. Yes, people might look back fondly of it and they might think, oh yeah, cool, we can reintroduce mega evolutions here or there or whatever it is. Of course, we can go back to it or whatnot at some point, because they always tend to do that as well. But again, like, you have to try to think, okay, well, it's not just saying let's go back to it. Let's go back to it in a different way. Let's like do it somehow other way, because you can't just keep doing the same thing and expecting people to go, oh yes, we'll shell out money for that, because that's the end of the day what you know they're going to do. And they've got a a live event there, Pokemon Day, whatever stream, whatever thing that they're going to do in a few weeks' time. And I'm really interested in some ways about it, because they could potentially like put up some mega evolutions. And I've seen a lot of people saying, oh, it'd be cool if this got an evolution, or this got a mega, or that got a mega, or this got a mega. This Pokemon needs a mega evolution because it's so bad. Well, the thing is, if they do get mega evolutions and then like maybe they're in Gen 10, who knows, I don't know. Maybe they're not, but they like if we have Gen 11, they're probably not going to be in that, because like when you go more than a couple of regions away or a couple of generations away, suddenly the mechanics, even those that are, sort of reintroduced, are gone. It's like, yes, like cross-gen evolution or whatever regional forms are a mechanic, but they're a much more easily repeatable mechanic, and it gives you something to continually work with, rather than just going, oh, well, now we've said Mega Evolution, sort of like Bayonet or whatever. Like, Bayonet was like a fairly mediocre Pokemon, but then you got Mega Bayonet. Now it's like, well, now we've shot ourselves in the foot kind of thing, unless we kind of give it a, cross-gen evolution of some sort, or some other regional form or something like that. It's like, that's never going to really evolve again. So it's like, well, now that you've kind of put that cap on it, it's like now like, oh well, what are you ever gonna do with it? Like it's back to being like a mediocre Pokemon. And when you give Mega Evolutions to mediocre Pokemon, yeah, it might make them decently alright or okay or even really good. But then Mega Evolution goes away, and then it's like, oh, okay, now they're back to being, nothing again and forgotten about and no longer filling the niche that they kind of filled when they had the Mega. But as well, now, when you give it to strong Pokemon, it's like, oh, yes, this was already a strong Pokemon. Now it's just broken, basically. And maybe that Pokemon will lose how broken it was, but it'll still be decently good, or it still might find a niche or whatever it is, depends on what it is. And I'm not a huge VGC or competitive player or whatever else it is. But even for a playthrough team, if you think about like saying like, oh, am I going to get all the Megas? Well, people want to play with the Megas. Like, so you want to collect the Megas. That's the thing. It's like, well, how can they, make more Megas that make sense? And it's like, well, why would you give Megas to bad Pokemon? Because it's like, if you give them Megas, then you're saying, well, we're not ever going to do anything, or kind of not going to do anything with them again. Because now we've given them this special treatment kind of thing, and now we're just going to forget about them. We're going to get, like, but then it's, like, really annoying as well, because you're only going to give Mega Evolutions to the Pokemon that don't really need it, the Pokemon that are already really strong, and now just make them completely broken. So it's, like, a hard balancing act. You kind of got to find Pokemon that are not horrible, but are not too good already. You've kind of got to find those Pokemon that are kind of in the middle ground kind of thing, that are not horrible and yet not super good. Some Pokemon that are decent, maybe, but they need a bit of a buff, but like that buff like will be temporary and people won't really care about it, like, later down the line, and it won't really matter. I think like some Pokemon that they gave Mega Evolutions to were interesting. I don't really count Mega, I don't know whether I count Mega Rayquaza, but that's another thing, like, because that's already kind of like on the fence. But like some Pokemon that they gave Megas to, like, Venusaur, Charizard, Blastoise, Alakazam, Gengar, they were already like decent, good Pokemon. I think Gengar, with its ability like that, I could see like, yeah, that's cool. That new ability is really good. Charizard with Drought obviously is really good. I know that like people like the Tough Claws one, but the fact that it also got 2 Mega Evolutions is just a lot. But yeah, like Kangaskhan was obviously really good, but like I don't think it was like unwarrantedly good in some ways. I think like it was such a mediocre Pokemon like before that it was almost the perfect Pokemon to give something to bring it back to prominence, and like it has fallen off quite a bit since then, but I don't know. Like, again, this is what I'm just going through the list of Pokemon, and I've kind of gone through this a few times. Pinsir is a all right Pokemon, and I do think that it deserves something, but like it's tough. It's in a similar sort of position. It wasn't really that good when you gave it a Mega, so like again, I feel like you could do more with it. Gyarados was also already a really good Pokemon. So I don't really see what the point was there. Aerodactyl is like, that's kind of like almost the Paradox form in some ways. I don't know, but yeah, I don't really think that it was a decent Pokemon, but I don't really think that it needed too much. But then again, it wasn't horrible, I guess. Mewtwo's another one that got 2 forms, and one of the forms just really didn't make any sense. Like, its fighting psychic form didn't really make much sense, though its ability on its other form of Insomnia, I don't know whether that's any good, or like Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. I don't know, dude. But whatever, doesn't really matter. Ampharos, I love Ampharos, but I don't really think it needed an evolution. Now that we've got, you know, Cleavor, like Scizor feels like really weird position because now like Scyther's gotten so many different things that it's kind of weird. But I actually like Cleavor quite a lot, but I don't really think that it needed this mega evolution. I don't know. Heracross is really cool, but I think again it's one of those Pokemon that it wasn't like its mega wasn't as good and it wasn't like the best. Like if you had given like mega evolutions to like Kangaskhan and Pinsir and maybe Aerodactyl, I don't know, and just like, you know, buffed like Charizard, buffed, you know, Gengar with their abilities that they got from this, then that would be like better, like, or at least a hidden ability. Um, you know, then you could do that sort of stuff with them. Houndoom is like a really mediocre Pokemon, but its Mega was pretty mediocre as well. So I don't know. It didn't really do a whole lot. I think, like again, if you had to give in it all these Pokemon that are sort of middling and in the middle of the road kind of Megas, and then they had have gotten a little bit better for a little while. Like it's hard to say that they would have like really been all that good, but like without having to complete with like, you know, well maybe Ampharos is alright, but still like other Pokemon like, you know, Mega Charizard, Mega Venusaur, Mega Mewtwo, etc. I don't know. Uh, for Tyranitar, I think it's alright as it is, though I do think that it, like it's tough to sort of say because it has so many weaknesses and whatnot, so it's in a tough spot. Blaziken obviously like was already really good. Gardevoir was already really good. Marwar was like horrible before. Like it finally got the fairy buff as well. Like so that really helped it as well in some ways. But again, like just giving it the mega and then it just really fell off. Like maybe if again it didn't have to compete with Gardevoir and Blaziken and a whole bunch of other Pokemon, then it could have been like even better. But like then it would have had an even bigger fall off. Like I don't know. So like Aggron, I don't really think it that needed it. Manectric, I'm thinking like any Pokemon that only evolves like twice or whatever, that could be okay. But then again, it's like, well, now you're kind of like again building them up and then like suddenly they just fall off. Like so, but that does happen. I get that, but still, you know, Medicham, Manectric, they were fine. Like Bayonet, fine. Like also single stage Pokemon like Absol, that was, I think that was all right, but I don't think it was like that amazing. Latias and Latios, they're already like pseudo legends or legendary level Pokemon. So it's like, you know, why bother? Like who cares? Like they were already really strong. I don't really think the megas added that much to them. Garchomp was like his mega was actually like in some ways worse. Lucario, like he could have gotten a mega, but I think it was just a bit too good, kind of. I don't know. Abomastow could definitely get one, I think, but like you need to give it. I think some of the like the standard default of giving everything 100 base power or base um, points, you know, needed to be changed because some Pokemon needed way more help than others. Um, and some abilities needed to be buffed or changed or whatever. So I don't know. I really don't know about new Pokemon getting Mega Evolutions. I think like getting those Megas is one of those things. Like it's really tough to figure out what needs it and why. Mega Beedrill, not very good. Many Mega Pidgeot and whatever. Like Slowbro is like really goofy looking, but I don't know if it was any good. Mega Steelix, like again, you could make the argument. Sceptile, getting like dragon. That was kind of interesting. Swampert was already like really good, and I don't really think that it added much. Like, I could be wrong, but whatever. Sableye, like, it would be cool for Sableye to get something. Same with Sharpedo, but like the Mega didn't do them a whole lot. Camerupt like didn't really do a whole lot for it, I don't think. So again, there's a lot to compete with. Like for a lot of these Pokemon, Altaria, Glalie, Salamence, Metagross, Rayquaza, Lopunny, Glade, Audino, and Diancie. Like a lot of these Pokemon that were already really decently good, got like really, really bustedly good. And some of the Pokemon that were like, oh yeah, they're kind of here, got like, oh yeah, yeah, they're kind of here, like a little bit more, but like not like if you only had have given those Pokemon like that were kind of like here the buff, it would have been like, oh, okay, like now they might be like decently good, like some of the other Pokemon, like Sceptile or Swampert or whatever else. And if you had just said, okay, well, in this region, we're gonna have Speed Boost Blaziken, like or whatever, or given some of these other Pokemon another buff, some sort, or I don't know, dude. I really don't. It's so hard to figure out what you can do with like Mega Evolution because I think it's such a sort of like it's such a dead end. Like it makes everything such a dead end in many ways. Like once you give something a Mega Evolution, now you're kind of cutting like the ways in which you can say, okay, well, how can we make this better, or how can we make, well, we can't make it better because we gave it a Mega or whatever. And it's like, yeah, you've given some sort of treatment to these Pokemon, but really they're struggling still. Like they went back to struggling right after Mega Evolution went away, so. And there's a lot of Pokemon that struggle to find a niche, and there's so many Pokemon that's somewhat to be expected. But people want to play with these Pokemon, so if you want to give them, a niche, that's better. And saying hi, like a new form is like cross-gen evolution or whatever else. It's like, yeah, you can do that, but now you've got even more Pokemon in the mix as well. So that's why, again, like at a certain point, like it becomes like really, really tough to like, do this whole thing because it's like, well, you've got all these things going on. You've got so many Pokemon to choose from. And realistically, you can only pick like 6 of them to go into a team whenever you go for a fight. And certainly there's different strategies and styles of play or whatever else, strategies and whatnot involved in deciding your team makeup. And there's obviously, some Pokemon that are just like, this is good, play, Incineroar because it's good. But it is very much like, a balancing act. And I think that they have come to, like, I think like initially or whatever, they probably didn't really think enough about this. And while I think it would be really cool to see new Mega Evolutions, and that's what everyone's, out here trying to theory craft, and I might even try to do it myself. Like I'm almost trying to do it as well in here, but like at a certain point, I've got to think like, well, what would be the point of giving a Mega to this or giving a Mega to that or whatever it is? It's like, yeah, that'd be cool for now or for the next generation that we're in, but then what happens? Like when it goes away, like those Pokemon are left back to floundering where they were, and the typical Pokemon that we see now are back to kind of dominating the metagame. So you need to find something that's more permanent, in my opinion. Like, yes, you can definitely play with some of these Pokemon in newer games, like certainly without their Megas, but still, like finding things that would go well with some of these Pokemon or with some of the other Pokemon, because it is like, well, why are we giving a really good buffed Charizard? Why? Like, like, hasn't it got all the tools or most of the tools that it would need? Like, in some ways, it's a really decently good Pokemon, or whatever it is, Mewtwo, or whatever else it is, Metagross, whatever. Like, these Pokemon that are already, up there in stats. It's like, why are we doing that? For something fun? That is cool in some ways, and Mega Evolution is cool, and I think, a lot of people like it. I liked it initially. I thought it was a cool concept, but in the original games, they were like, and even in Holland, they were really overpowered for the most part, because like almost no one else uses megas, and it's like in Alola, where they tried out a new gimmick, which was like Z moves. Basically, only the trial captains or whatnot use Z moves, but you can use Z moves, and like they use Z moves, so they make it a lot harder of battles to beat the Kahunas or whatever else it is, and timing to know when they might use their Z move or whatever else it is, and that sort of thing of going on. Same with terrestrialization. Like, that's like, both of these are sort of like temporary buffs to things in some ways that don't really like need to continue, if you know what I mean. They buff every Pokemon kind of equally, and they also hinder every Pokemon kind of equally. In that way, like, they help every battle equally, and they hinder every battle equally, rather than just being something that, like, Gigantamax is another one that you can argue, like, a lot of Pokemon that got Gigantamax, it's like, well, what was the point, to an extent, because they're never gonna basically ever use those things again. Same with like Mega Evolution. We thought that would never get used again, but like they might use it again. Who knows? But still, like, realistically, if you're saying let's bring back Gigantamax, and I know some people don't want to see it for a while, but again, it's like, becomes like, well, why would we give new Pokemon Gmax forms? You know what I mean? Same sort of thing. It's like, where would we find ourselves, in a few years when we've continually done that, like, for a bunch of Pokemon. Suddenly you give Mega Evolution, like, I don't know how many Mega Evolutions it is, but let's see if I can. No. It doesn't say, I don't think. Yeah. Maybe I can find it somewhere in an article quickly. Who knows? Let's see, because I can't remember how many there were. I could just count them individually, but I'm lazy. I'm lazy. So lazy. I don't know. I can't find how many there were and whatnot. I don't know. There were a fair few, though. There was like several, wasn't there? There's 46 currently. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 30 or 30 there, roughly. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19. So yeah, like 20 or so Pokemon, roughly, maybe, that would get new megas, maybe, like, so it becomes what 20 Pokemon, like, if you're gonna give, same thing for Gmax or whatever, like, if you're gonna say, let's bring that back and it's a temporary thing and it blah blah blah, whatever. Like, I get that, Tri-Stylization, whatever, and Z moves are kind of like temporary mechanics, but like the effects that they have on Pokemon are not something that benefits a single Pokemon so much, like Mega Evolution or Gigantamax in some ways, that now is never going to probably be in the game again, or is rarely going to be in the game again. Like, like maybe it'll be in Showdown or whatever else, but like in the actual games, it's not going to be, a big thing, So it is tough because it's like, here we're going to showcase these, 20 or so Pokemon. Why? What for? Like, it'd be really cool to give Greninja a Mega in some ways. It'd be cool to give Delphox a Mega. It'd be cool to give Chestnut a Mega. But then what? So what? They got Megas. Like they're not really that amazing right now. And yes, giving them 100 base stats to work with extra to do something else would help out, help them out for a generation or so, but then it becomes like, well, what are we going to do with them after that? I'd rather see them do more stuff like Legends Arceus, or like in some ways like Violet, like have seen new Pokemon that are effectively the same Pokemon, but their future forms or their past forms or their, regional forms or some other cross-gen evolution of some sort. Like, let's make Mega Evolution like a cross-gen evolution, or a, you can actually find this Pokemon. It's actually just its past, form, or its future form, or it's something else. Like, explain it away in another way, use it in another way so that it's more permanent for some of the Pokemon that kind of need the buff, and like some of the Pokemon will, get those things, but I don't know whether you need to do that for every Pokemon. I don't know, maybe you should, just because of the fact that it's, a gimmick unto itself type thing. So it's like, yeah, they're all tied together in some way, so if you give it to one and don't give it to them all, it kind of feels a little bad. Then again, you can argue that giving these evolutions feels bad because, again, like, you have that, oh, cool, they're relevant for 5 minutes or whatever it is, or for a few months or whatever it is, or for a period of time, and then go, oh, okay, cool, they're no longer relevant again. So it's a really tough, like, position to be in. It'd be cool to have some of these Pokemon do something cool and get something, out of it. But it's like, well, what do you do then? Because as soon as that Mega Evolution thing is gone, well, we're right back to where we started, with those Pokemon being like, oh yeah, they're not really filling any niche that I can't get with something else or somewhere else or whatever. So why would I pick them over something else? So, like, again, if you give it to all the Pokemon, it's really hard, again, because it's like, well, as I said, do we really need to have all of these Pokemon have that those abilities or have those buffs that they got from Mega Evolution for the whole period of the rest of the next, like, however long Pokemon's going to be around? Like, so it's a really tough balancing act of saying, well, what mechanics are going to, come back, and why, or why are we going to spotlight these 10 or 20 or whatever Pokemon it is to get a G-Max or to get a Mega or to get some other new like gimmick that buffs them or helps them, like regional forms or whatever else. That's a thing that you can keep doing. Like, you can keep doing those things. I think those are the most successful things to say, hey, remember this Pokemon? We're going to give it some love, or we're going to give it something else to build it up and to do something with it. So instead of being like, oh, okay, we've forgotten about that Pokemon still, like Flygon. Everyone wanted a Mega for Flygon. Even I wanted a Mega for Flygon when they said, oh, these Pokemon might be getting a Mega or whatever else it was, and there was rumors about it and things like that or whatever. And then it was said, oh, yes, we were going to have one, but we couldn't figure out a good design or whatever it was and all this. I was like, oh, man, that sucks. I hope Flygon gets it in the next game or whatever else it was. And then it didn't happen again. I was like, oh, man, that sucks for Flygon, I guess, or whatever. Though, then again, was it actually in the Dex? I can't remember. Whatever. Doesn't matter. But still, I think Megas are a difficult, like, and same with, like, Gigantamax. They're a difficult thing to actually get right. Because, like, just giving, like, Megas to anything and everything, like, give it to, let's say, 10 really good Pokemon and 10 mediocre Pokemon. Yeah, the mediocre Pokemon are now decent, but now the, really good Pokemon are now busted. It's like, what? Unless, like, you've given it, like, the right things or the right abilities or whatever else it is, a mediocre Pokemon will never find, like, that much success over a really good Pokemon getting another big buff. So you're saying, oh, yes, let's just give this metagame a headache for these few Pokemon that are really good and designed to be really good. But in the meantime, we've given these other Pokemon something, but we kind of really haven't, because what we've given them isn't good enough, or isn't, well balanced enough, or isn't niche enough to kind of fill the thing that, would stand out or would be used by players against these other things that are already overpowered and already really strong and whatnot. So, like, why would they go? Like, why would somebody really go out of their way to find this thing if it's not really, like, super duper amazing? Like, like, if you have something that's super duper amazing and it's locked away, it's like, oh yeah, well, at least that thing that's super duper broken and busted and whatever else is, hidden away. But these things that are just like, oh yeah, they're mediocre or whatever, they're easy to find. Then you could say, oh, at least, like, there's that where it's really hard to find these, or you have to go out a long way out of your way to get Mega Salamence or whatever else it is or whatnot. And it's only at the end of the game or after the post game or whatever, or almost at the end of the game that you can actually do this or do that or whatever else it is. So then you're kind of leaning people into using the less, quote unquote, less good Pokemon during most of the game, because now they're better than most of the other Pokemon because they've got, this 100-point stat buff that they can use. Yes, you can only use one of them in each battle, but if you say, oh, walk up to a bug trainer or whatever else it is, and you happen to have something that's on your team that's super effective against that type, you just Mega Evolution that Pokemon and then just sweep through it. Like, like, you could probably do that anyway without the Mega Evolution, but the Mega Evolution helps and makes it easier, like, avoids you having to, like, set up as much, like, in some ways, like, so you've already got that kind of extra buff in some ways of doing your defense curls or doing your swords dances or whatever else it is, because you've got that 100 points buff to some of your stats. So, but yeah, I think it's interesting to think about in that way, and I do want to kind of theorycraft some, but I don't know what the point is, if you know what I mean. It sounds cool on paper, but I think like theory crafting regional forms, regional variants, and things like that, and cross-gen evolution and things like that is much more fruitful because, you know, you've got these Pokemon that are like there, but now like you've suddenly got, okay, why is this Pokemon not fairy type, or why is that Pokemon this type or that type or whatever it is, and you can kind of quibble about why, you know, some Pokemon are the way they are or whatever, but at the end of the day, it's better, you know, when they do go, okay, well, that does make sense, let's make an evolution or cross-gen evolution or regional form that is this, that makes more sense, you know, that sort of thing. So yeah, guys, I think it's cool in many ways, but I do think it does bring up like a lot of the same problems or a lot of those sorts of problems in that way. So, but yeah, I'll be excited to see if they do bring out new megas, but in some ways I'll also be a little bit like, because like clearly giving megas to already really strong Pokemon, making them broken isn't really all that good. It isn't really all that fun. It just warps the metagame around those few Pokemon. Giving it to really weak Pokemon, kind of like, oh yeah, so what? They're still not as good as this, or unless they get this ability or whatever else it is or whatnot, it's still not worth my time to like in a playthrough, yeah, maybe, but like VGC or whatever wise, it's still probably not worth your time to really go out of your way to do something with those Pokemon. You know, some people might try it for a little while or whatever, but it probably won't really catch on. For those more mediocre Pokemon, yeah, sure, some of them could find a niche or whatever else it is, but like it depends on what else you've kind of like thrown in. So at a certain point, I do think that Mega Evolution, maybe it should just stick where it is and say, well, let's not give anything a new Mega Evolution. I know that kind of sucks because it's like, well, that's the whole idea of like bringing this mechanic back is to maybe, I don't know, but yeah, it's a little annoying because again, like how are you meant to sort of balance everything, you know, whatnot, all of that sort of stuff. I don't think that it makes a whole lot of sense to, you know, to do it, honestly. And I know like Dynamax is kind of like its own separate thing, so in some ways, but it is sort of a similar thing, so it's the same sort of issue. Don't give new things. There's no point in giving new things Dynamax. Like, so what? Like, if you, like, Shedinja is something else, but, like, if you gave it to Ninjask, let's say, like, what's Ninjask going to do with a Mega? Or what's Ninjask going to do with a Gigantamax? Or whatever. Like, it might be funny, it might be kind of cool design or whatever, but at the end of the day, like, where does that leave Ninjask after that thing is gone, realistically? Back where it started, you know, like, and even if, like, again, you give it something decent, it depends what else you give buffs to or give Mega Evolution to. So if you give Mega Evolution to something that already outcompetes it, and like Shedinja, like, you know, it's way better, you know, counterpart. Like, why would we play with Ninjask if you give Shedinja the same thing? A Mega Evolution that just gives it better stat buffs. What would be the point? What would be the difference? You know, like Shedinja's way better. So why would anyone play with Ninjask? Or even not exactly the same sort of thing. Like, why would I play Ninjask when Charizard's right there? Or why would I play this when that is right there? Why would I do any of that while this or that is there? I don't know. It doesn't really make much sense. I think they have changed how Mega Evolution kind of works in some ways, and that is kind of cool in some ways because, you know, I would rather not see Mega Evolution be so OP and toned down a little bit, but I don't know how like it's going to work going forward in the future after, like, because they've got like this timer energy counter mega evolution type thing going on now, that they kind of showed off. They might show off it a bit more, but like that seems like you've got to power it up, so you can't just do it on turn one or whatever, and then it slowly runs out. So eventually, you'll not have your mega, or it'll de-mega evolve or something, or whatever it is. So it only lasts however long or whatever, I don't know, or until you beat the Pokemon or whatever. So you can't just set up and sweep as easily. So they have changed it a bit, obviously. And in this new game, I don't know whether held items are going to be a thing or whatever. So, like, I don't know how they're going to work out, like, held items and whatnot. So, and whether you're going to be able to mega evolve more than one Pokemon per battle or whatever, I don't know. So that seems interesting, at least in some regards, and making it easier to perhaps, like, I don't know, because like if you've mega evolved your Charizard into one form, I don't know whether you should be allowed to mega evolve it into another form, same with Mewtwo, but then again, who would? But still, like, could you like see mega evolution, like if you've got your Charizard at the beginning of the game or whatever, and you mega evolve it, then it, like, your timer runs out, then you build it back up again, you mega evolve again, I don't know. So some of those things I would be interested to see in that regard, certainly. But again, that's going to be a huge hindrance to new mega evolution as well, because if you say, oh, let's give this Pokemon a mega evolution buff, oh yeah, well now we've kind of nerfed, not 100% nerfed, but you've kind of nerfed mega evolution by saying, oh well, it's got to be on this timer, and you've kind of buffed it by saying it's no longer a held item in some ways or whatever it is, but by saying, hey, well, you don't have any held items, that's also like an overall like drop down in power and whatnot. So that really hurts a lot of Pokemon. So like, especially like Unburden or whatever and things, abilities like that, or Gluttony, or whatever other abilities, etc., or things like Frisk or Knockoff or whatever, things like that. So yeah, I don't know, guys. We'll have to see when it comes out, but yeah, I've got a lot of questions and I've got a lot of thoughts in that regard, at least. So you guys should let me know your thoughts. Also, let me know if you've enjoyed this one. Hope you have, and I hope you will join me again in another one.